Imagine being a 10-year-old orphan, your parents gone in a tragic accident, only to be taken in by a couple who parade you around like a trophy while secretly draining your inheritance. That was my life for 7 years. But when I turned 18, I made sure they paid for every single lie they told. Stick around, because this revenge is one you'll never forget. If you've ever dreamed of serving cold, hard justice to someone who betrayed you, hit that like button, subscribe, and buckle up for a story that'll leave you cheering. This is the tale of how I turned the tables on my hypocritical foster parents and made sure their small town would never see them the same way again. When I was 10, my world shattered. My parents, my vibrant, antique-living mom, and my kind-hearted dad were killed in a hit-and-run. I can still remember the way the sheriff's voice trembled when he told me, his hat clutched tightly in his hands. I was alone, standing in the middle of our small church-going town, where everyone knew your name and your business. My dad had inherited a small fortune, enough to let him and mom live quietly, running an antique store filled with treasures mom adored. But after they died, there was no one to take me in, no aunts, no uncles, just me and a trust fund meant. To secure my future, enter Mr. and Mrs. Banks, the picture-perfect couple from our church. They stood up during Sunday service, tears in Mrs. Banks' eyes, declaring, "God has called us to give this poor little girl a loving home." The congregation clapped, whispered praises, and I, a grieving kid, thought maybe I'd found a new family. But the second the church doors closed, so did their hearts. The Banks had a daughter, Kitty, a year older than me. She was all prim and proper, the kind of girl who'd smile sweetly in public, but sneer at you in private. I thought we'd be like sisters, but Kitty barely acknowledged me unless we were in front of others. In public, the Banks were saints fawning over me, calling me our sweet girl, their hands heavy on my shoulders like I was a prop in their holy play. In private, I was invisible. They'd sit at the dinner table, laughing with Kitty about her day, while I picked at my food, wondering why I didn't matter. The worst part? They were spending my money. My dad's estate sent monthly checks to cover my care until I turned 18. When I gained full control of my inheritance, the state chipped in too, but the Banks? They treated that money like their personal piggy bank. A new Volvo parked in their driveway paid for in cash. A trip to New York, another to Hawaii. Kitty got designer clothes, a used car worth $20,000, and cash gifts to the church that made everyone ooh and ah over their generosity. Meanwhile, I wore hand-me-downs, my bedroom a cramped guest room with a lumpy mattress. They weren't cruel in the obvious ways, no beatings. No locked doors, but neglect stings just as bad when it's wrapped in fake smiles. Mrs. Banks had a particular obsession, my mom's antiques. After my parents died, she helped herself to mom's collection from the store, claiming they were hers now since she was taking care of me. She gave pieces to Kitty, to her cousins, to friends, all while preaching about how godly she was. But there was one thing she coveted most, a Baroque-era fine china set, so rare it was worth tens of thousands. We're talking real deal, might have been touched by Napoleon-level china. It was mine, part of my inheritance, but Mrs. Banks acted like it was her heirloom to pass to Kitty on her wedding day. She'd show it off at church events, gushing, "This will be Kitty someday," while I stood there, biting my tongue, knowing she was stealing from me in plain sight. By the time I was a teenager, I saw through their act. They'd coach me before social worker visits, telling me to gush about how wonderful and godly they were. I'd smile, nod, and lie through my teeth, because what choice did I have? But inside, I was burning. Every time Mrs. Banks bragged about her business acumen to explain their fancy lifestyle, my stomach churned. Every time Mr. Banks hinted I owed them for raising me, my fists clenched under the table. They were stockpiling my trust, fund to pay for Kitty's college, while I was left to figure out my own future. They thought I was clueless, just a tomboy who didn't care about fancy things. They were wrong. When I turned 17, I started planning. I'd always been a good student, and I'd earned a partial scholarship to an out-of-state college. My inheritance would cover the rest. I began collecting evidence quietly, methodically. I requested bank statements from my trust, which the bank happily provided. Quarter by quarter, I documented every dollar the bank spent. The $40,000 Volvo. Noted, Kitty's $20,000 car. And the binder. Those lavish trips, the cash donations to the church, the antiques they stole, all in my 3-ring binder of justice. I wasn't just angry, I was prepared. The banks kept pressuring me, saying I should share the wealth once I got my inheritance. After all we've done for you, Mr. Banks would say, his voice dripping with fake sincerity. I'd just smile, nod, and add another entry to my binder. They thought I'd come crawling back to their house after I turned 18, ready to hand over my money. They didn't know I'd already booked my one-way ticket to college, my bags packed with the few things I owned. I wasn't coming back, ever. The final straw was the church's annual antique sale, a big event where the whole town showed off their generosity. The banks loved it, another chance to play saints, donating trinkets that mostly belonged to me. 3 days before the sale, while they were off on another shopping spree with my parents' money, I made my move. I boxed up that priceless Baroque. China set, every plate, cup, and saucer, and drove it to the church. I handed it to the rummage sale committee and said, Mrs. Banks wants to donate this in her name, all proceeds to the church. I gave them the appraisal, proving its value, and the number of my attorney in New York for verification. The ladies gasped, praising Mrs. Banks' generosity. I just smiled. If she was as godly as she claimed, she'd be thrilled, right? I knew she wouldn't be. Mrs. Banks thought that China was hers, her crown jewel. She'd bragged about it for years, oblivious to the fact that I knew it was mine. The sale was a hit. Ladies from all over the county snapped up pieces, a cup here, a saucer there, an egg cup for someone's collection. The church raised more money than ever before, all credited to the generous Mr. and Mrs. Banks. When the Banks showed up to work the sales second day, Mrs. Banks saw her precious china on display and lost it. That's mine. That's my china, she screamed, her face red, her hands shaking. The church ladies calmly explained, No, dear, your foster daughter donated it in your name. You're getting all the credit. Mrs. Banks threw a tantrum, yanking at her hair, demanding to know who bought what, trying to claw back every piece. But it was too late. The set was gone, scattered across the county, and the church was richer for it. The town saw her for who she was, selfish, materialistic, and anything but godly. She cursed my name, called me a thief, but the more she ranted, the worse she looked. The congregation whispered, shocked at her unchristian behavior. And me, I was already on my way to college, my inheritance secure, my binder mailed. To the Banks with a letter from my attorney. It listed every dollar they'd stolen, every purchase they couldn't explain, and a warning. Contact me again, and you'll get a bill and a court date. Karma has a way of balancing the scales. The Banks thought they could use me to build their reputation, but in the end, I tore it down with the truth. Justice isn't always loud, it's in the quiet moments, like knowing they'll never escape. The whispers in that small town. Sometimes the best revenge is letting people show the world who they really are. If this story gave you chills, smash that like button and drop a comment. What's the most satisfying revenge you've ever seen? Maybe it's a story from your own life or one you heard on Reddit. Share it below, and of course, subscribe for more epic tales of justice served. Until next time, keep standing up for what's right.